Hello, Gary. Good to see you.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I said a big howdy.
Hey,
Gary,
Wes.
you need to say that again because it did sound like you were announcing a band.
Bijou Bob and Wes.
Is that what
Either that, Bob, or it's a new law firm in town.
Yes, sir, that's true.
We've got one, we've got two.
Oh, there's Nancy. Mayor, is everybody going to be here tonight?
But yes, they are supposed to. We're getting Cliff to bring his food out here or put it up, one or the other. He doesn't know if he wants to eat out here.
Tomorrow we're going to Grapevine just for practice.
Not too far in case you need to come back.
Happens, I can get home.
Oh, I do have a quorum. I'm sitting here waiting. 1, 2, yep, we do have a quorum. So the time is 6:01, and we are here on Thursday, July 9th for a special called session and budget workshop for the city of Coppell. There is a quorum present, so I will call the meeting to order. First item on our list is citizens' appearance. And we have had no one who has either emailed or contacted anybody to join our Zoom. So we will move to item 2, which is consider a resolution extending the mayoral declaration of a state of emergency as a result of the COVID-19 virus, and providing for an interim public safety measures and providing an effective date and authorizing the mayor to sign. Mr. Mike. Yes, turn on your mic.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as part of the continuing COVID-19 situation, we have been passing resolutions to continue the emergency health declaration. Ours is coming up fairly shortly. And we also know that the state is coming up fairly shortly, but I think it's on the 11th that the governor's order comes up. So what we need to do this evening, since there's this lag time, is to go ahead and extend our declaration. What we understand the governor is going to do is every 30 days, basically, just kind of have this rolling continuation as long as the emergency is going on. So we're recommending that the council choose August the 25th as the next date. And again, if something were to change and they were to drop the declaration, so be it for us. But this way, at least it gives us some time and to see what the governor is going to do and then Dallas County is going to do. So this is just a continuation of the declaration through a recommended August the 25th.
So that is our fourth Tuesday.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
It's a regular council meeting.
It's a regular council meeting. Okay, any questions? Hearing and seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item number 2, extending the mayoral declaration to August 25th.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Matthew. Hill, Roden, Yingling.
Wait.
I'm sorry, just Councilmember Matthew. All in favor?
Long, Mays, Roden, Yingling, Matthew, Hill. None opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, there is no other items in our special session, correct? So we will adjourn from special session, and the time is 6:04. You guys did great. So now it is 6:04, and we will move into the budget workshop. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike for some opening comments.
Yes, Mayor. This evening we will be discussing the debt service fund and the general fund specifically. As you know, we've already covered the special revenue funds, water, sewer, and other special revenue funds, and we've had our discussions with our service organizations. This evening, Jennifer, Kim, and Casey will all have a part in this presentation. And so we are going to begin, I believe, with Jennifer giving us an update on some of the valuations, what's happening there, and then she will then call on the next speaker, which will be Kim, and then Kim will then call on the next speaker as Casey, or Casey's going to come before Kim. I don't remember. So anyway, yeah, that's exactly right. So start and the alpha and the omega for finance is Jennifer. That's exactly right. So we'll turn it over to Jennifer now.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Is there a presentation going to be pulled up?
While we're waiting on that, Jennifer and everybody that's speaking, it's kind of quiet here. If you could speak up a little bit into your mic or however it's set up, that would be helpful.
Okay. All right, if we can go to the next page. All right, what this is showing you the taxable value, the breakdown that we got on our preliminary value back in May. And it shows that the increase was $1,223,000,000, or about a 15.20% increase from the certified last year to the preliminary of this year. And then at the bottom portion of it, it does give you the breakdown of that increase in value, where it came from. If you notice, new construction is taking it with about 31% of that total increase. And then residential was about 21% of the increase. So overall, the increase is about 79% in the commercial, business, personal property area. And that tends to be the area that we lose a lot of value, because those are the people that actually do the protesting. So that's where we started with in May of this year. So if you go to the next slide, please. All right, this shows the how we come up with what value we are going to use to do our projections on the tax rate. So you got the preliminary value, that 9.2, which was the 15.20% increase, shows you our certified value. Then if you look in the middle portion, what we've done is we calculate the average decline over the last 29 years. And that has been a 5.53% decline from preliminary. Then we also look at our highest decline was 11.64, and that occurred in 2002. And then our lowest decline was 2.91, which occurred in 1993. So what we have done is, because of the economic times and that we're getting our values at least a month later than what we normally do, we are going to use a 4.95% increase in taxable value as our starting point at this point in time of the budget process. And what that equates to is just 1% less than what we actually experienced last year. Okay, so if you'll go to, and then what I've done is just, I keep track of it every Friday. I can get it from Dallas County every day, but I only get from Denton County every Friday. So I keep track of what the value has done. And the 15.20 that we started with in May, as of yesterday, is down to 12.89. And it really didn't start the decline until about 2 weeks ago, which is probably when they started their ARB hearings. We went from 15% down to the 12.89 in about a 2 to 3 week period. So if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, what this is how we determine the split and the tax rate. And you can see the $8,443,000, that's the taxable value that we anticipate from the certified value last year to the 4.95% increase. That gives us the $8,443,000. Now I want you to go down to the middle portion. So based upon that value, what we did was the debt service rate will need to be 0.108960 to cover the debt service. And that includes the new bonds that we're getting ready to issue, the $15,600,000. On the general fund portion, we used the 3.499% increase in revenue. So what we did is we took last year's revenue that we got in the general fund, 3.499% increase, determined what that revenue was, and then we backed it into the tax rate. So that's different than how we've always done it before. Before, we've always set the value and then determined what the tax rate. Well, now we're setting revenue and then determining what the tax rate will be. So based upon those assumptions, at the 4.95% growth, the tax rate for the general fund would need to be 0.471091. And then when you add those two together, it becomes a tax rate of 0.580051. So it is a slight decrease from the current tax rate. But remember, if for some reason the value comes in any higher than what the 4.95, then what we would have to do is lower the general fund tax rate, because all the revenue we can get is $1,344,785. That's the max amount of revenue that we can increase the general fund for property taxes.
So what am I hearing you say? There is no adjustment for new construction?
We estimated a little bit, but when I looked at the new construction, because we don't have the formulas yet and we don't have the forms, we can't exactly see where it's going to go. We did not incorporate that in, but we have reduced our 4.95, but what we think we will lose in new construction. So there may be a little bit of play there, since we don't even know exactly how the forms are going to look yet.
Just as we go along, a couple of things. So, excuse me, Jennifer. First thing, Mayor, appreciate your question greatly. One of the things that we're talking about the values is typically what we've gotten at the end of the month are certified values, and therefore then we're able to give you a firm number so that that's what goes in the budget and that's what you are actually considering as part of the budget process. Because of SB2 now and because of the timing of everything, we are not going to be receiving certified values. We are going to receive certified estimated values. So all the numbers that you're looking at tonight are based on our best information that we have available right now. So as the information changes over the next 2 weeks, when we have that typical end of the month meeting where we say, okay, here we go, that it will still be the best available information at that point, even though it's not final. So when you heard Jennifer say if the values at that time come in higher than what she's expecting, the tax rate itself will actually have to go even down further than what we're showing. If it goes the other way, if it's less, then the council will be put in a position to consider having to potentially raise the rate to make the same revenues that we're projecting right now for property tax. Does that make sense?
It does. And Jennifer, when you were talking about you didn't have the forms yet,
Yes.
was that you didn't have the information to go into the forms, or you don't even have a form yet?
We don't even have a form yet.
That's what I was hoping you weren't going to say.
There's supposed to be a training next week on the new forms, and then we're hoping at the end of that training we will receive those.
Great.
Because it's a secret, evidently. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say thank you. I should just say I'm sorry.
And even though the values are certified estimates that we're going to get on July 27th, we have to assume that those are final so we can go ahead and set a rate and then get our taxes adopted and get the information to Dallas County. So hopefully they're pretty close to what the actual numbers do come in, because we won't get those until a month later. Probably about 2 weeks after we actually adopt the budget.
And okay, so
just for quick clarification, in case people are watching this budget meeting, we can explain, because this comes from the state comptroller's office, right? I mean, the appraisal. I'm sorry,
district,
the appraisal
yeah.
district.
Dallas County Appraisal.
Dallas County Appraisal District. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this just an off year, or are we going to be running into this on a regular basis?
This is just an off year.
It's an off year with COVID.
Okay. But weren't we, before COVID came, knew we were going to be in a similar situation, but because of COVID, it has extended some of this.
Some of the
Okay.
time, that's correct. But what we talked about with SB2, which is still true,
Yeah.
SB2's calendar, everything's crunched at the end, because what happens is in the past you had a little bit of a breathing room. Then you could have time to
Right.
go through the budget process after you have the certified values. Here you don't have the time.
Right. And then, sorry about the comptroller. I was on the website today, and my brain was still there. Also, Jennifer, could you tell me what the value was again that we would? You said it was 1 million. I don't remember.
Increase.
Yes.
Okay, it was 1,223,000,000.
Okay.
That was the increase that we got as of May.
No, the number I was looking for is we could not increase.
Oh, the 3.499%, the
Yes.
increase in revenue
Yeah, what is
equates
that?
to 1,344,785.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat one more time?
1,344
Uh-huh.
and 85.
Okay. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Go ahead.
Oh. I didn't know whether we were raising hands or just speaking. Could you help our memory by telling us what the general fund amount was for 2019, 2020, our current year?
The tax rate?
No, the general fund amount.
Oh, yes. I see what you're, it was 38,433,117.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cliff? I'm not gonna. If you have a question, obviously don't talk over each other. But if you have a question, just jump in there, and then if we have an issue, then I will say, okay, we'll start calling on everybody.
Break it up. Yeah, okay.
I'll stop it.
Jennifer,
Yeah.
we're going to get that, we'll be able to calculate that tax rate according to our calendar, I think on the 11th of of August. Is that correct?
We'll
Is that
start.
when we set the tax rate? Or have to be
You'll
set by
adopt the
that
tax
time?
rate, yes.
Okay, and how many days after that do we have to change the tax rate if things go sideways? If they change the amounts again, because here again, we're still doing it on estimates, are we not?
Yes, but those will become the certified values. Any change in value after that point in time will be done as a supplement. And we get those all the time when they
Okay.
start settling some of the appeals.
And so the tax rate is the tax rate on the 11th? Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So Jennifer, our current tax rate is 5840, correct?
Yes.
And I realize this is all preliminary, it'll change, but this is 5800 and you said it a slight increase?
Decrease. If I said increase, I'm sorry. I meant decrease.
Okay, because I was seeing it as a decrease. I thought maybe my Aggie math was wrong. That's
I can understand how you would question yourself, but
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So, yeah, I look forward to going through the expenses. I think staff's done a really good job of beating those down and trying to figure out how this all plays in together.
Okay. One point I wanted to make about the general fund, and Kim will go through it when she starts reviewing all the expenses. This does include a second set aside for Beltline, the debt. So we set aside last year, and then we're setting aside again this year. So we'll have like two.
And what's the approximate amount there, Jennifer?
It's $1,165,000 per year.
So that's somewhat close to what the increase is.
Yes.
Last year.
Yeah, it's close to the 3.499% that we're allowed.
Right.
I'm very glad to see that we're setting aside, because that was what we said we would do last year, as I recall. So that's very good news. After all of the crises we've had this year, I wasn't sure we were going to be able to enable that to happen. So that is good news.
Okay, any more questions on the split or the assessed valuation? Okay, if not, next page. This is just your debt service fund, and the proposed budget, it shows what we expect to collect in property taxes and interest income, being $9,270,000. Our services, which is the principal interest, excuse me, and agency fees, $9,270,000. We're using $166 of fund balance. Sorry. And so that shows a slight decrease in the fund balance for the debt service fund. Shows you that the bulk of the revenues are from property taxes, and then it shows you the split of our principal and interest for the tax-supported debt. So if you go to the next page, please. This just shows you our entire principal and interest payment schedule. It does include the new bonds that are being issued, the $15,600,000, showing that our principal and interest for next year is $9,260,000. You recall the expenditure is $9,270,000. That $10,000 is the agency fees that we pay for processing our debt service. Next page is where Casey will pick up.
Any questions about the debt service piece before we jump off that? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, all.
Hey, Casey.
Me okay? Okay. Then we are going to go over the mayor and council line items. On this page 7 here, this is just going to be your summary view. If you'll compare the column that says 2020 original budget to the 2021 proposed budget, you'll see that overall we're proposing an increase of $5,000. If you're comparing the 2021 proposed to the 2020 amended, you'll notice that current year amended is a lot higher. I wanted to point out that that's specifically in your special projects and your other services and is entirely attributable to the encumbrance carryovers. If you'll recall, whenever we do our first budget amendment every year, we do come back and amend the budget for any purchase orders that would have been still outstanding as of 9/30. We then take those purchase orders and roll the associated budget to the next fiscal year to match up when those payments and services happen. And then going through the 2021 proposed budget, there's 2 main categories that y'all are budgeting for, and that's going to be your supplies and then your services. Your supplies classification totals $10,600, which makes up about 2% of your overall budget. The vast majority of your expenditures are in the services category, which is $629,013. And that makes up about 98% of your overall proposed budget. If we can flip over to that next page, we can go through some more of the details. So for next year, what staff is proposing is a lot of decreases that Kim will also expand on that you'll see throughout the rest of the general fund. Where we could, we looked at historical costs and slid monies around if needed, but for the most part, we really tried to reduce where we could. So starting with your office supplies account, that is down $580. Computers and food and refreshments are the same as they were last year. For your telephone line item, there is a slight increase, but that has to do with cell phone replacements. Y'all will have new council members coming on next year that will need some equipment. Whenever you look at your training expense, this will be something, again, that Kim will echo. We have decreased this line item by $24,000. But we moved most of that to that very next one for legislative travel. Next year, we anticipate a very heavy legislative travel year for y'all. So thank you very much for representing us.
Casey, can I ask you a question there?
Yes, sir.
My impression is we've never come close to spending that training expense budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think it's appropriate to reduce it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The only thing on that one is, if I recall correctly, don't we do like 5,000 a person?
Historically, yes. Basically, we're proposing that be cut in half.
Okay. So that training obviously is going to be down dramatically for this fiscal year. Well, at least for the spring, summer, yeah, this calendar year for sure. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And then moving down to that next category of dues and memberships, it's up $10,000, and that is entirely because this is where we budget the chamber and their request. And if you'll recall from our last workshop, they requested an initial $10,000. We have reflected the requests in your budget here and then over in the special projects category as well. And then coming down to the last three on this page, the only differences here is going to be in printing services, which we've decreased 4,200. And that just has to do with us trying to focus more on electronic advertising. Julian, if you'll switch us to the next page. Okay, so the first item on here is going to be contingency funds. Historically, we budgeted 50,000. We are proposing a slight shift to what you see here. We had reduced the contingency amount down to 10,000, but if you'll look towards the bottom of the page in that other services category, we received some better information on what we'll be doing with our lobbyists. So specifically the solutions for local control, we'll be able to reduce that line item by 48,000, and we would move that to your contingency amount. So for a next edition of this, you would expect the contingency amount to be reflected at 58,000, and then the solutions for local control at 42. All right, and then going into that large middle section here, the special projects, this is where we budget all of those service organizations that have sent in us requests. I do want to remind y'all that after the orchestra's revised request, the total amount of dollars requested from us was $241,360. Of that, 45,500 is showing up in the dues and memberships. If you'll look about a third of the way down on that list, you'll see the Coppell Arts Council and the Coppell Historical Society with little asterisks next to them. For those two specifically, they do qualify for hotel occupancy tax fund use. So what we did was we looked at the restrictions and moved what we could. So for the Historical Society, their full ask of $10,000 does qualify. So we put that into the hot fund. For the Arts Council, their request was $25,000, and we were able to move 15 over into the hot fund. So that is taking that $25,000 out of general fund. For the service organizations, as I said, they are all in here at their requested amount. We can always revise those as you see fit. Do we have any?
Casey, quick question.
Yes, sir.
Monies that come through, realizing there's no bottom line effect, but CARES Act money that come through and then say go to MetroCrest Services, will it flow through special projects here, or will that be carried somewhere else?
No, that would not be reflected in your budget here.
Okay. Is that a supplement somehow, because we'll have both revenue and expense?
It'll be a totally separate fund. We've set it up.
So like a special revenue fund? Okay, thank you.
Okay. And do we have any questions, comments, suggested changes on mayor and council budget for next year?
Casey, I have a quick question on other services on the bottom.
Yes.
HMWK.
That is our sales tax legislative.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, if those are all the questions we have for mayor and council, I will turn it over to Kim and let her get into the meat of why we're all here.
Hello, Mayor and Council. This evening, I will walk you through the general fund revenues and expenditures. And Julian, if we could turn to page 10. Actually, let's jump to page 11 first. The next page. At the bottom of page 11, you will see the last column on the right, which shows the total fiscal year 2020 proposed revenues are $8,584,043, or 11.7% less than the adopted 2020 revenues. This reduction is the net impact of several items that I'll go over this evening. Julian, if you can take me back one page, please. At the top of this page, we'll start with the change in the property tax revenue. Property tax revenue did, as Jennifer stated, increase $1,344,785, or 3.499% over the current year adopted property tax revenue. Proposed property tax revenue does account for 62% of total general fund revenues. Last year, or the current year that we're in, the adopted budget for property taxes represented 52% of the total general fund revenues. As Jennifer mentioned, property tax revenues is based on the combination of an anticipated increase in the value of 4.95% and taking into consideration the SB2 limitations on the total increase that we can have in our property tax revenue, which is 3.499%. Julian, can I get you to go to the next page again? I'm sorry. The next area that I wanted to talk about that's impacting general fund revenue is the water sewer reimbursement. It's in the middle of this page, and it increased from 1.8 million to 2.2 million. This increase is based on a cost of service study, and it was reflected in the water sewer presentation that I did a few weeks ago. The reimbursement is for services provided by the general fund to the water sewer fund. So this is a revenue source to the general fund. Julian, can you go back to the previous page? So the increase in both the property tax revenue and the water sewer revenue is more than offset by the decrease in the sales tax revenue, which is shown toward the top of the page. The proposed sales tax revenue is $7,868,000, or 40% less than the 2020 adopted budgeted sales tax. This reduction is in anticipation of the Rule 3.334. In the current year, or the 2020 adopted budget, sales tax represented 28% of the general fund revenues. In the proposed 2021 budget, sales tax represents 18% of total general fund revenues. Property tax and sales tax still account for about 80% of general fund revenues. However, as you're noticing, the change in Rule 3.334 is pushing property tax percentage up about 10% and the sales tax percentage down 10%. In addition to the sales tax revenue decreases, the proposed budget also includes a decrease of $300,000 or 43% in the building permits line item, which is reflected in the licenses and permits, which is at the bottom of this page. The decrease is based on a recommendation from our Director of Community Development, and it's based on the negative impact of the COVID pandemic and what it's having on our economy. If we could change to the next page now. The category for charges for services is approximately $340,000 less than the 2020 adopted budget. This decrease is primarily the result of a 25% reduction in both recreation fees and program revenues collected by the Parks and Rec Department. The uncertainties surrounding how long the COVID situation will continue is a contributing factor to this reduction. The Parks and Rec Department will offer services, but they're anticipating a lower capacity level will continue. For example, the camps are serving 40 campers instead of 120 campers, and they're anticipating that these kinds of things will continue in the future, or at least into the next budget year. In addition, the transfer line item, which is in total other revenues, is $1,690,078 less than the 2020 adopted budget. This transfer in is from the CRDC's Special Revenue Fund and is based on 35% of sales tax revenue for that fund. Since there's a reduction in sales tax revenue, the corresponding reduction in this transfer in was made. The purpose of this transfer is to reimburse the general fund for 50% of parks admin and parks and rec programs and 100% of the core and tennis center costs that are recorded in the general fund. If we could go to the next slide. And to finish up with revenues, this page, the total, the top part of this page shows the previous 9 years and the current proposed budget total revenues for the general fund. The graph on the bottom shows you is a better picture with the blue and the red pieces of pie. That's the property tax and sales tax, which makes up 80%. It's just a visual picture of where our revenue source is. And I will stop right there and see if you have any questions concerning revenues of the general fund. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on to expenditures. So if you could go to the next page, Julian. These next two pages are the fiscal year 19 actual and the 2020 adopted budget. Julian, if you could go to the next page.
Kim, can I ask you to go back? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just need to understand where where we're starting. When you go back to the property tax and you look at the amended budget of the 38954, the ad valorem delinquent and the penalty and interest, those pieces we are assuming are not part of the calculation that we're going to get?
Correct.
Okay.
They are not.
So you're looking at the top line of amended, or you're looking at the top line of adopted?
Adopted.
Adopted.
Because adopted was the certified value. And that's the current year. The delinquent is a previous year that hasn't been paid that we were able to collect in the current year.
Thank you.
Kim, just to make sure we identified that we've got an issue on streaming for the way the image comes through. So make sure you say what page you're on as well, because our those who are watching can link to the agenda and actually follow, because it's all posted online. They can actually follow through that link, but I just want to make sure you're saying the pages so they're looking at the same page that you are.
Okay, I'll
She's
do that.
actually been very good at that
Right.
because she's been making sure that Julian is on the right page. So thank you for that.
Okay. So we are on, I'm sorry, I can't see.
13.
Are we on 13?
Yes, page 13.
It is, okay. I don't have my reading glasses on and I can't see it. It's too small. Okay, so the first two slides, which are pages 13 and 14, as I said, show the actual expenditures for the 2019 and the current year adopted budget. The current adopted budget for expenditures was $71,893,723, which is shown at the bottom of page 14. Julian, if I can get you to switch pages and go to page 15. Actually, go to page 16. Page 16, the far right column shows that the proposed budget is for expenditures is $64,402,531. Thank you, Julian. This is a $7,491,192 reduction, or 10.4% decrease from the current year adopted. Now I would like to go to the next page, page 17. I think that it's easier to look at the graphs to discuss the expenditures. And I would like to start at the bottom, which shows the expenditures by classification. And I will start with salaries and benefits. The proposed is down 4.9%, or approximately $2.2 million from the current year adopted. The decrease is attributed to vacancies that are on hold, are being budgeted at $0. We have 26 positions on hold that are being paid out of the general fund. The budget also does not include any new positions, and the budget does not include merit increases for general or public safety employees. The next area is supplies. Supplies are down 9%, or about $216,000. The primary reason for the decrease in supplies is a shift in purchasing practice. Historically, for example, fire would purchase medical supplies in anticipation of what they thought they would need. The proposed budget is based on purchasing supplies based on a just-in-time inventory philosophy. The new purchasing practice is also being utilized by police. Between police and fire, this is saving $68,000. In addition, the parks operation reduced the budget for chemicals, botanical items, and tools and equipment by $95,000. They are revising their planting schedules as well as the frequency and methods used to maintain the city's green space. And then the last item that's causing a reduction in this supplies area is a $25,000 decrease in fleet's fuel budget. And the decrease is based on usage in the market. Next.
Yep. Come on. I've got a couple of questions. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Nope.
Being somewhat familiar with just-in-time logistics, does the fire department have a strong plan on how to ensure that emergency supplies are available?
Yes.
Kevin?
Would you like this, Kevin Richardson? Would you like me to answer that one?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So the answer to your question is yes. We actually have what we consider a minimum stock level, and when we reach those minimums, there's plenty of lead time between that and the arrival of the supplies to get there. So we're anticipating that. We've actually been implementing that already. So we got a pretty good plan to make that happen.
Okay, so in other words, you're going to have instead of doing bulk storage, you're just going to have minimal storage for immediate need and replace that as required. Is it kind of what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Kim, one other question, and I'm sorry to go back to page 14. It took me a minute to sort through what we were talking about. I don't see hang on. I'll come back to that one later.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Hey, Wes, I'm gonna
Yes.
ask you a question. Is this related to trying to look for the belt line?
No, it wasn't. That was a previous question that I didn't ask, but no.
Okay.
No, I was counting up, and I'm not sure which one I'm missing, but I don't think all of the facilities are listed under the department, and I'm not sure what I'm missing. That's why I was hesitating.
Facilities is on page 15.
Yes, 14 actually.
Art Center.
Yeah, that's it.
It's in the CRDC.
Thank you, Gary. That's covered under CRDC?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't see it listed by name, so I was wondering. I counted them up, and I knew there was one missing, and that's what it was. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, Julian, if you could take us back to page 17. And the next category I'll cover is maintenance. Maintenance is down 13% or $427,000. The decrease in this line item can be attributed to a $135,000 decrease in building maintenance. This decrease is a result of Town Center receiving a new HVAC system. So the maintenance costs attributed to that system will decrease. In addition, the facilities manager continues to review all of the various maintenance contracts to seek better pricing. The traffic division also decreased $50,000. This decrease is related to signs and signal maintenance. The idea is that the various street improvements means that those signs and signals have been replaced, and so those will not need as much maintenance. And parks operations decreased their grounds maintenance by $150,000. The reduction is a decrease in the mowing contract of $25,000, which is the result in the reduction of mowing frequency, and also a decrease of $80,000 for the parks and athletic field maintenance is included in this budget, which is accomplished through the reduction in the frequency of maintaining these areas. The next area is services. That is down 6% or $803,000. However, it would be down almost $2 million. It's down $1,968,328 or almost 15%. This area is including a second debt payment for Beltline. That's $1,165,416. So the net effect is a decrease of only $803. Items that were decreased, training has been reduced $284,000. Departments are moving to providing training only to maintain certifications and licenses. The Living Well in Coppell was decreased $35,000. The diversity wealth training was decreased by $45,000. And there was $48,000 for generational training that's been removed. Printing is down $82,000, and we're moving to more online and electronic versus printing and mailing. Advertising is down $100,000. Again, we're moving to online versus printing, and there's a reduction in programs and events being offered. We've removed the automated quality assurance, which was budgeted at $100,000 in the current year budget, and we're doing that in-house. Mayor and Council's special projects line item was reduced almost $69,000, as mentioned during Casey's presentation. $60,000 was removed from the current year budget well, 60,000 was removed that is in the current year budget for the smart city consultant and the 2040 implementation. And special projects are down 40,000, and that would be the extravaganza did not happen and won't happen next year. Celebrate Coppell will be smaller. So some of the things that Parks and Rec does, some of their programs and events will be smaller. Next is capital. Capital is down 66.8% or 2.7 million. The majority of this is last year we had the 3 fire trucks. Page 18 in your handout does provide you a list of all the capital outlay items, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. The final category is transfers. Those are down 25% or 1.1 million. The transfers include 926,781 to the capital replacement fund. It includes a $300,000 transfer to the cemetery. And there's 2,144,000 transfer to the IMF. 758,000 is for facilities. 1.2 million is for streets, and 190,000 is for traffic. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on these categories before we move to the top.
Yeah, Kimberly?
Yes.
So, and I'm not sure if this is you or Casey or Jennifer. If you go back to page 16. So if what we're seeing here is a reduction approximately of $8 million in expenses, correct?
Yes.
And then if you go back to the previous page, the reduction in fire and life safety services and police combined is approximately $5 million. So I think if I was a citizen watching this, I would say, good news is we're reducing costs by $8 million, but we're doing it on the backs of public services. Now, part of that you just answered because we're not buying $3 million fire trucks this year like we had to last year. But help us understand how we can feel confident that the great news of these reduction in costs is not going to affect our ability to provide first responses.
Okay, so that, Julian, if you would take us back to page 17. There. So at the top, it shows the change in public safety is a decrease of $4,340,508 or 14%, and $2,850,000 of that is related to the fire trucks. $1,025,000 is related to a decrease in salaries for police and fire vacancies that are on hold. There's also a $272,000 decrease in salaries related to 2 court vacancies and a vacancy in environmental health. And I think Chief Barton is joining us, and he can speak to the decrease in positions and the impact that has on police.
Got the video, but not the mute. Mayor and council, yeah, we at the PD last year when we first started to know that SB2 was coming, we looked at all of our operations across the board, and we at the time we had 7 openings already, and so we started looking at our operations. And, you know, are there some places that we can do better? We looked at our call volumes. We looked at our response times. We looked at our arrest rates. We looked at, we looked virtually at every single thing in this department. And I can tell you right now, I can tell the citizens that even with these frozen positions, you have more police officers on the streets today than you've had in any other year prior. So you have plenty of policemen out there. What we did was we run with between 7 and 8 police officers on a shift. And that's a lot. When I came here in 97, we ran with 3. So there's a lot of policemen out there. During the day, it's 6 to 7, but we changed our operations because we reduced our traffic unit by 1 motorcycle officer. And so, but they also help out with patrol responses. So when we started looking at the possibilities of the future budgets, our first priority was to make sure that the citizens were going to get the police officers they needed and when they needed them. And so we covered that part, and then we moved from there to the in-service or the interior of the department. And we just changed a lot of our processes inside. We still have plenty of detectives. We still have we have a task force officer out at DEA. We still have I'll call it a street crimes type unit that's a plainclothes unit. So even with those reductions, we have plenty of coverage for the city of Coppell. I don't think a single person in this city will see or even notice these reductions at all. We reduced our command staff. I restructured the entire department. I felt we were a little top heavy, and so we've reduced a lot in the upper, I'll say, ranks. And then in the mid ranks, we felt like we got a little heavy in some areas. We had some sergeants that didn't have a span of control. And so what we did was we took their positions and merged them with sergeants' positions that had smaller spans of control. And nobody is overwhelmed. We're not stressing any part of the PD. We're perfectly fine right now. Again, we've been running with 7 openings for a long time. Those 3 additional openings came earlier this year, and we just didn't see that we needed to fill them. And to be honest with you, we just, we looked at the things that we'd like to have. It's nice to have tons and tons of officers, but the more officers we have, the more cars we need, the more vests we need, more, and those expenses are, if I had 10 more officers, I'm not even sure what they would drive in terms of cars, because our cars are right where our staffing is. So we're in a good place, and like I said, I'm really proud of the command staff and all the help we got from the city manager's office on really just streamlining how we do business inside. And again, all of it was stressed upon us, and then we stressed upon the officers, because everybody was involved in these new changes that we did not want, and we were not going to let public safety dip 1%. So, like I said, you have more cops on your streets than you've had in a long time, even with these reductions, and we'll keep it there.
Thank you for that explanation. Did you have something else to add, Kimberly?
I just didn't know if Chief Richardson had anything to add.
Sure, I'd be happy to comment as well. The budget that's being presented actually, as we mentioned, has 4 vacant firefighter positions. The question on whether our service level will be impacted that's being presented to you actually will provide more service, because what this does is it anticipates the opening of fire station number 4, which we don't have right now. 4 is tentatively scheduled to be completed in December of this year, and operational approximately in January. Those firefighter positions for that fire station were secured from a grant for the first 3 years of the service. The 4 vacancies were due, as Chief Barton said, anticipated the streamlined sales tax as well as the property tax issues last year. So over that 12-month period, we had 12 positions for attrition that we chose not to fill right now. Any impact of that we may see with those 4 vacancies will occur after the opening of fire station number 4. And that will be primarily just due to normal staffing levels we're going to try to maintain, whether from sick or injured firefighters or mandatory leave that they may have to take or their training assignments. So we've made some adjustments on how we schedule leave that would reduce that impact. So the answer to your question is there will be no negative impact based on where we're at right now. And we're actually going to have a much greater impact with the addition of Fire Station 4 opening in January.
Good, thank you.
I have a question for Mike. Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mike, thank you. I'm looking at the email you sent around 5 o'clock about cost reduction for 2021 budget.
Yes, sir.
And page 6, it says police department is $71,700. The fire department is $139,489. Is that in addition to what we are already seeing from Kimberly?
No, sir. What Kimberly gave you was kind of the high level. What I gave you was some of the specifics, if you will, that identified what the reductions were. In essence, we grouped it together by department, and none of these numbers that you see on that spreadsheet have the personnel cost in them.
Okay, so I have a follow-up. How many staff do we have, full-time and part-time?
I know it's over 425, but let me look. But go ahead.
Yeah, so with the projected reduction in sales tax, are you proposing the same number of personnel for next year?
The way we have it in the budget is we have the same number of personnel, but those, I think Kim said there were 26 positions that are budgeted at $0.
Can you explain that, please?
There are 26 positions that have no salary associated with them. So each one of those positions is identified, they're all frozen, and there's no dollars to support them, so we can't hire them.
But the staff numbers will remain same as last year.
Staff numbers on a piece of paper will remain the same, yes, but staff numbers in practical service to the citizens will be reduced.
What we're doing is we're retaining those as an FTE that should we get some funding and decide that, we do need to hire a position, it's still available. And then we would come back with a budget amendment because there are no dollars associated with the FTE. It's just you're keeping the position, but no money.
Okay.
And there's 405 in the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike, I think my question is for you. During some of our early discussions, you were talking about, or maybe it wasn't you, but someone was talking about combined fleet services and pooling of vehicles. Is that still on the table, and is that reflected in this budget?
The fleet management is complete. They've looked completely at all the fleet. They've looked at the way they're doing the maintenance. Is Kent on the line?
I am.
You give the details to that.
Yeah, and so I'd say it is on the table, and it is reflected in these numbers. We're still working through the details of which vehicles need to be disposed, which vehicles need to be moved into more of a pool use scenario. But that is still in the works, and it's definitely still alive. In fact, we had a conversation today about moving a couple of vehicles that are underutilized from a couple of departments into another department that needs a vehicle.
So that sounds like that the savings or any reductions aren't actually able to be realized in this budget until we execute those plans. Am I hearing that correctly?
They will be in process. We will realize those savings, particularly, one way that the savings are reflected is in the the ongoing fleet and equipment maintenance. And so as we dispose of or or move vehicles into a different function, the maintenance load reduces. And so that's what we're trying to do. And some of that is equipment. So it's trailers and things that are underutilized that don't have, we don't have any capital replacement. We don't spend a lot of fuel on them. But part of that fleet reduction is pieces of equipment. So hope that helps answer it. I think it's captured, and we will realize those savings during this next fiscal year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jennifer? So this is somewhat of a clarification for me, but also I think sometimes we run through this pretty quickly, and if I was a citizen watching or listening, the big picture is hard to follow because we go through so much detail. So if we go back to page 16. So when we started the presentation, we said that property tax revenues were increased by about 3.5%. And so if I were a citizen watching, I would say, well, why are they doing that in these tough times? Why don't they cut cost? And so then we get to this screen, and the good news is we've cut over $8 million of cost from previous budgets. So if I'm sitting there as a citizen, I'm saying, well, you're raising property tax revenues and cutting costs considerably. That doesn't add up. And the answer is in the great reduction in sales tax that we're having to overcome. So this thing all fits together like a puzzle. But I think when we talk about small pieces like we've talked about, it's hard to see that overall. So is that a reasonable statement that we're at least as proposed, keeping the tax rate about the same, which does create 3.5% more property tax revenue dollars, but we're having to overcome such a great reduction in sales tax that to make all that work, we've got an $8 million reduction in expenditures, correct?
Yes, because we're cutting the sales tax from almost 20 million down to 12.
Okay. And I'm sorry to belabor that, but it just seems like sometimes we get lost in the forest and the big picture needs to be pointed out.
And like you mentioned back when we were talking about the tax rate and the growth of the 3.499 is almost exactly what we need for that set aside for Beltline.
So an option, I'm not saying we should do this, but an option would be to keep the revenue flat and not move forward with that project.
That is an option, yes. But that the way this budget is presented, it is in there.
Right. Thank you.
Julian, do you want to go back to page 17?
Did have one question though. So the sales tax change takes place in October of 21. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. This has been a week of sales tax rules for everybody. I say that because we've had multiple conversations this week and actually spoke to the comptroller's office. Yes, that's the day it becomes effective of October of 21. What the problem is that there's nothing that prevents a company from switching right now. And that's why we've got to go out and visit with our companies. And so two things when we were taking this into account, this is way more than you asked, Mark, so I apologize.
It's okay.
So the two things that we looked at were not only the implications of SB2 and COVID, but the second thing was the sales tax rule. And so what we consciously decided is that we wanted to start building the budget based on what we knew was going to happen in October of 21. The reduction next year, so I hope I say this right. This year, the sales tax, we reduced it by 40%, right? Next year, we believe that the reduction in sales tax is actually by 60%. So what we did is we're ratcheting down. So we're having reduced services this year and everything along those lines, and looking at what that differential is for next year. And y'all can, Casey, I know I just saw the sheet today, but I think the sales tax is going to reduce by another $2 to $3 million next year. So we're basically, and I'm going to use this term loosely, we're weaning the organization down to that number in 21. And so what you're seeing this year is roughly $8 million in reduction. So next year, this will be our new base, and we're still going to have to reduce it even more by about another $2 to $3 million.
Right. So our fiscal year starts October this year.
Correct.
So the projected decrease that we're seeing in sales tax is pretty much a result of the impact of COVID. Between now and October, when then the sales tax change takes place, and hopefully we've overcome the COVID-related issues.
Yes, sir. One of the things that we're going to be talking about next week is, I don't think we got the information out today, but our sales tax was actually up for the month of May. So we're going to be looking at adjusting the amended budget for this year, and we're going to be looking at what we're looking at for that 40% reduction. I can tell you that right now, I won't say who the merchant is, but right now somebody's already flipped the switch, and that was about $1.5 million less revenue to the city of Coppell through sales tax. And so it's already impacting us. So we believe the 40% is a very safe number for us to use. And if it comes in higher, that gives us some leeway as we prepare for the 21 budget. We could use that as a set aside to help overcome, right, some of the reductions if we're not able to make as many of those reductions as we need to. Does that make sense?
So, Mike, if you said that they flipped the switch already, even though it doesn't come into effect until next October, are we able to go back and try to recoup that money?
We won't be able to recoup the money, but we'll be able to maybe talk to them about flipping the switch back. Because what they're doing, it doesn't mean they're wrong in what they're doing. It just, because of the way the rule's set. There's some debate about the rule's date of implementation being the October of 21. So it's a little bit of a quandary for us. We may be able to, but more than anything else, we'd like to protect it going forward.
Okay. Because I know we had that consultant that went out and
he's still working. Right. Yeah, he's still working with us, and will be, and he's part of the meetings that we have. But the way, again, it goes back to the debate of the rule. The rule actually became effect the end of May, right? I'm talking about the rule was adopted and formally, here it is. And it has this caveat of this date about these two particular sections, which we believe mean that they go into effect October of 21. That doesn't mean that if they do it now that they're wrong, at least from what we can tell.
All right, thank you.
Sure, that was not, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and if this is the first time you've heard this conversation about sales tax, sorry, you are confused. Because we've been talking about this for years and years, and there are days that we're continue to be confused. So, but a great question,
right.
Mark.
But let me just give you an example. The reason why, because I can point to this directly. We had the conversation with the comptroller's office, and we're talking to staff, and they're being very kind and very helpful, and they're really patient with us. But I asked them a particular question, and I'm a layman, and there's 4 attorneys on the call. And I said, as a layman, you use the terminology an employee or agent of the seller. I said, so what is an agent? The comptroller's office couldn't answer the question, and it's their definition. So So I think as a layman, I know what an agent is, right? But we're trying to interpret a rule. We need you to tell us what it means for the rule interpretation. And right. So again, I don't mean to belabor the point, but we would rather be, and I know it's hard, but we would rather be conservative in our approach using these numbers. And if we're right, yay for us. If we're wrong and the number comes in higher, that's still a yay for us, because that means we possibly can, like I said, set aside in the fund balance or set aside that sales tax number and be able to use that to help offset some of the decrease we believe is going to happen to us. Kim, back to 17.
We're on the top of 17. We've talked about public safety. Now we'll talk about culture and rec. Culture and recreation has decreased 1.8 million or 13.4%. There are 2 FTEs on hold in the library and 2.5 FTEs on hold in the Parks and Rec department, which totals about $225,000. In addition, as I mentioned previously, there's going to be changes in the mowing schedule. There's changes in how they're handling our green space, which is creating some decreases in this area, as well as they're going to be scaling back some of their events. The next area is public works. Public works decreased by almost 1.7 million. 453,000 is related to vacant positions that are on hold. In addition, the current year adopted budget included 750,000 to replace the HVAC in Town Center. The last area is general government, which appears to be up $380,650, but that increase is really its decreases being offset by the increase of $1,165,416 for that second bond payment for Beltline. So this division is actually down $784,000. A little over $320,000 is related to vacancies that are on hold. And in addition, the current year adopted budget included $100,000 for a project management program, $100,000 for the website redesign, and both of those items are not included, obviously, in the current proposed budget. So that was my presentation on expenditures. Do you have any further questions? If you turn the next page, page
Kim,
18.
Kim, just real quick. So
Yes.
I think it's really important to say this. You know, last summer, at least it's important for me. Last summer, we started having the discussion about, actually last fall, well, last winter, SB2, 2019. So going into 2019, we knew that the legislature was going to do something on property tax. It took all the way through the end of the legislative session for SB2 to finally get past the 3.499. So we went into last year's budget fully understanding the implications of SB2, and you heard tonight how that works. And we talked about it last year, and it's doing exactly what we thought it would do. It has an impact on the M&O side. If you do no net or no new revenue and or the 3.499, as evidenced by the way it works, eventually that tax rate for M&O comes down. Now, it does not affect the debt service rate. The debt service rate is the rate that can fluctuate. So citizens in any municipality or any county could see their tax rate actually go up as more debt is taken on for, in our case, say Beltline or Royal or something along those lines, right? And so at that time, we talked about, and if y'all recall, I said, I don't know that I've ever recommended a rate increase, but at that time I had recommended to you, with knowing what we were going to do on Beltline, based on the modeling that we've done in the past, that by including it in there, it allowed you the flexibility to be able to level off your tax rate, right? And so to Wes's point, this year we included, again, the amount necessary to the second year, the amount necessary for covering what the debt could be for Beltline. So now you have options. last summer, we got notified about what the potential could be for the sales tax rule. And so if you recall, I came to you and I talked to the council and I talked to the staff and said, look, with SB2, we're going to have to, start making some adjustments. You heard Danny mention that we started looking at it and everything along those lines. Then the sales tax issue came out, and in December, we basically said, okay, we've got to, quote, I'll use the term, shut it down. And because at that time, the rule was going to go into effect April 1st of 2020, this year. And so we were able to already, because of what the work was being done on SB2 for reducing expenses, and because of the actions we took related to the sales tax back in December, none of us knew about COVID, right? None of us knew anything was going on, but our staff did a phenomenal job of identifying a way that they're going to reduce their expenses. So we put that in place. Now, the rule started kind of messing around with what date it was going to be effective or not, but then here comes COVID. So we had already put in place the freezes on employment. We had already made the reductions in terms of our expenditures. While the amended budget hadn't come to council, we had already been talking about it, so this council was prepared. As we went through this budget process over the last several months, Jennifer and her team, Kim and Casey, and all the directors, and actually all the assistant directors and the staffs, you heard Danny mention it, but every one of the staff members in this organization have been deeply involved in how are we going to do this. This is a game changer for the city of Coppell. And so I just wanted to say to you that we appreciate your support as we've gone through this process. Because we believe that you have supported us in what we are attempting to do, which no city council has ever had to deal with in this scale, right? And so this idea of the reduced expenditures is not something that's taken lightly, right? The services that we provide to the citizens, we take very seriously. I mean, we've chosen to be in this profession to serve our community. In order to do that, we have to be able to support each other. The budget that as proposed, still keeps in place the culture that we have as an organization. The reductions in expenditures were based on the premise of our culture and how we serve. So we were all aligned throughout this entire process. I'll probably repeat this on August the 11th, but I just think it's important for you to hear as you go out of this, because I appreciate the way Gary kind of walked through that. This, I'm not going to say it's not easy. It's not easy. But we still have work to do. And this doesn't end tonight. It doesn't end on August the 11th. As I mentioned to you earlier, we're already starting to look at a 21-22 budget that probably is about $2 to $3 million in the red. And we're going to have to figure out how to make that work. So our work doesn't end not only through this process. I mean, it just starts all over again. It actually never really starts. It's just kind of a cycle that we go through. But in that list I provided that Councilman Matthew referred to, it just gives you a general idea of what the potential impact of the reductions that are included in this budget could have on our citizens. And everything that we did was to minimize as much as possible so that our citizens don't really see or feel the impact of these kinds of reductions. So I'm very proud of our staff, and I'm very thankful for the council that we have, that we're partners as we walk through something that this community has not had to walk through before. So I just want to say thank you before Casey speaks.
Okay, I'm going to continue. If you'll go to page 18, Julian. That's just a list of, it's the detail of the capital outlay, which we've already talked about. So then, Julian, if you'll take us to page 19. The final area that I would like to cover is the fund balance walk forward. The fund balance walk forward shows the beginning fund balance at October 1st of 2019. And then it takes it shows the projected revenues and expenditures for the current year, what we're estimating fund balance to be at the end of the current year. When we show the proposed budget, also projects an increase of $93,000 after taking into consideration, or the proposed fund balance will increase by $93,000 after taking into consideration the proposed revenues and expenditures presented to you tonight. So it would take our fund balance to $68,535,810. The next area on this schedule is a breakout of the fund balance, and it starts with the non-spendable, and that's 10% of the proposed expenditures. So it's the $6,440,000, and that is charter required. The next area is restricted. These items are revenues that are received that are restricted for a specific purpose. So we have the E911, the PEG is for our cable channel, and then the solid waste education is the 10 cents that we receive on the water sewer bill, or the water utility bill, that is restricted for solid waste education. The next area is committed. The first item is the 15% fund balance per policy. And again, that's 15% of the proposed budgeted expenditures for 2021. And this is a policy provided by council that we designate this. The next areas are allocated, and these are the allocated, these are the categories that we allocate to, that after the audit, excess revenues over expenditures are allocated to these categories based on the percentages shown. The next area are assigned, and assigned are projects that have been identified. We just don't know when they're going to happen. And then the final category is the unassigned, which is projected to be $36 million at the end. And I'd be happy to answer any questions over the fund balance walk forward.
Kim, on the top part of the page, the category that says identified budget savings, is that a net number of the lower revenues as well as the lower expenses, or is that just the expense piece?
So, and Casey, you can interject. That does not include salaries. So that's the current. It's what the directors have identified they can reduce their current year budgets by, not including salaries. Okay. So training costs, supplies costs, some of the costs, for example, the core, because they're not having some of the programs.
Okay, so it's strictly expense.
Yes.
Excluding salaries. So
correct.
We will still be looking for addendums to the budget that will be both revenue and expenditures.
Yes.
Which we always do, but I guess we're always curious to find out where things are going. So, but this is at least the expense piece that is already identified and the money is not being spent. Correct. Thank you.
Mayor, I do want to point out that the revenues and expenditures at the top there are amended. They are as of the amendment that we brought before you at the end of May.
Oh, good. Okay.
Additionally identified almost $2.5 million that we have not formally amended for.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Casey.
Mr. Long, yeah. Honorable sir.
Casey, the $2.5 million, Kim said for this year. Is it this year or for the year 20 as opposed to 21?
No.
Correct. However, in the preparation for fiscal year 21, a lot of the departments continue to incorporate those same reductions. For instance, if a department identified current year a training category that they could reduce, they carry that
Can
forward.
also do that in 21. Thank you.
Any other questions about the walk forward of the fund balance?
The belt line question. Because the belt line question, I see in here, I see the belt line 1,165,416. Now, we indicated that this is the second time that we've done this. And so where's the other half of it?
It's in combined services. If you look back on page 15.
In 20?
In proposed 21 budget.
In the 21 budget?
Yes.
So it's already over there. It's out of the fund balance.
No. And fund balance still has the designation that we did this past year.
Mm-hmm.
When I say this past year, the current fiscal year.
Okay.
1920.
Okay. So that was the same thing that was there.
Yes, sir.
Last year.
Right. So instead of showing it in fund balance because you haven't done anything yet,
yep,
it's showing up in combined services on page 15.
Okay.
That's why that shows, if you look at the amended budget compared to the proposed budget, you can see the increase between combined services, and that's where the majority of that is.
And so if it wasn't spent next year, then it would go in here. In the fund balance.
And that's the plan.
And that's the plan.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mike, so this is showing that even with SB 3.334 and COVID, we've been able to reduce our budget by about $8 million. And on top of that, be able to reduce our tax rate slightly while seeing a very modest property rate or property evaluation of 4.95% increase, and really not impact any of the services that our citizens will see. Is that fair? Is that a fair summary of what we're looking at tonight?
The majority of it, but I would say that there is going to be some impact on what. Example, extravaganza. We're not planning on holding extravaganza, so I would say that would be a reduction in service, right? So those are the minor things. We talked about the medians may just a hair taller just because of the maintenance schedule, right? But in terms of the services to the citizens, another example could be over at the Corps. You've heard Brad present in the past, they basically track the program participation, right? And so what may happen is that there may be fewer programs, but there be more attendance at some of the more liked programs, if that makes sense, right?
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that I would say. I wouldn't say that, I can't say that our citizens won't feel an impact, because it's possible that they will. They'll see an impact. They'll maybe not get to participate in a program that they got to participate in the year before that may have been only partially attended. So now it's not even going to be offered just because we've got to really be laser focused on what we're doing. So I just don't feel comfortable saying that they're not going to feel an impact.
There will be hot buttons that are not taken care of, and we will hear from those individuals. The people that walk through the park, and we're changing the frequency schedule of the mowing. If they like it the day after it's mowed, and they're used to seeing that more often, then they're going to notice. And those are the kinds of things. You go through that list. There will be some people who feel a change, but I don't think it'll be dramatic.
I kind of hate to even ask my next question, but going back to something that Gary was talking about, our property taxes are showing about 62% of the budget of the general fund, and sales tax are 18%. Do you have any kind of wild guess what it's going to be the year after when SB 334 actually goes into effect in full force?
No, sir. I mean, the percentage of property tax will be higher, just based out of the dollar amounts, and the sales tax number will be lower. I just couldn't tell you what that percentage will be.
Yeah, I understand. I was not expecting to see it drop this much this year, but I'm very glad that we've recovered, and hopefully this will be a nice transition to the whatever that end point is.
Mr. Cliff, did you have
Mike, didn't you think that we were probably going to see a 60% reduction next year versus the 40 we're assuming now?
Yes. So the brain and the mouth got to line up here. I can calculate it when we come back together on the 27th. Right. I could probably do it now if you trust my number, putting a couple of things together. But I would feel safer saying, I'll give you that percentage when we come back together that Monday at the end of the month.
I think I know how to do that. I think it's going to be another 5% reduction.
Right.
40 to 60 and is to 10, so it's going to be another 5.
Mr. Cliff, did you have another question?
I never got the first one.
Oh.
On the silver line last year, it said that it was 3 of 5. It's now 3 of 3. Refresh my memory on what we decided on.
Well, the council, through all the conversations, the $750,000 has been the number we've been working with. I mean, that's what Tracy's been spending all her time with, working with that number. When we first started this, if you recall, many years ago, we said we were going to do a little bit over the next 5 years.
Correct.
So if you were to tell us, hey, let's go ahead and add another 250, that gives Tracy 250 more. What part of the issue was when we came up with the 5 years was we weren't sure when DART was actually ever going to ask for the money. So it's really in y'all's court. If you want us to go to year 4 of 5, that's fine. If you want us to go to full 5 years, that's fine. Or we just know we've been the governor's at $750,000. Let's put it that way. So it's really something. If y'all want to direct us to add that 250 to it, we can do it.
Yeah, we can make that decision.
Yes, sir. Right.
Any other questions? Okay. I think, Ms. Casey, you're next.
Yes, ma'am. Julian, if I could have you switch files. So if y'all will recall, at the last budget workshop, I talked through a memo about the changes in schedule that are required by the SB2 shortened and earlier calendar. The major change for us right now is going to be what I'm calling the initial proposed budget. Historically, what we've done by charter is produce a 170-page document that basically mimics the budget that everybody is used to seeing, and we publish that by August 5th each year. However, with SB2, in order for us to meet all of our deadlines, we have to adopt a budget on August 11th. A requirement of local government code is that we post and publish a proposed budget available for public review 31 days or more before we adopt. So what we discussed and what I have compiled here is a 21-page initial proposed budget that meets the 7 requirements outlined in local government code. The first requirement, and if you can see on your screen, is going to be this cover page here that has a sentence right in the middle, that very first one that says that we'll raise more property taxes than last year. That's been an ongoing requirement for all of our proposed budgets for the past several years. What I've also done here on this same cover page is add a disclaimer at the bottom, making sure that anyone reading this initial proposed budget is aware that the information contained in this is as of today, these are not the budget numbers. These are not the tax rates that you will be voting on. What will happen is after we receive those certified estimates from the appraisal districts, we will come back and publish the full-length proposed budget, which will have the tax rate, revenues, and expenditures that you will be voting on during that August 11th meeting. So Julian, if you'll flip over to that second page. Pages 2 and 3 within the initial proposed budget are a shorter version of the budget message that you are used to seeing in our annual budget document. Again, I have the caveats in there about these are initial numbers that will be shored up after we receive values on July 27th. They will be made public by our charter deadline of August 5th. But we've got the budgetary highlights where we call out some specific numbers for revenues, expenditures, personnel, and debt. Julian, if you'll flip to page 3. And here in our budgetary considerations and influencing factors conversation, again, we're just reiterating, this is being published as a legal requirement. This is not the final proposed budget that council will be voting on and that we want the public really to lay eyes on and give us feedback. Julian, if you'll flip one more page. So the other requirements that local government code asks us to put together are the financial schedules. Specifically, we have to break out all the different funds, the actual spend of the prior closed year, the amended amounts for the current year, and then the proposed amounts for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as putting in all of the cash available to each fund. So what I've done here is basically take this condensed schedule that you're used to seeing in the beginning of our budget document, and I've expanded it to replace all the many different individual fund pages that we also usually see. The next 5 pages will have bands in green. Whenever you see green, that has to do with the 2019 actual amounts. Each fund is represented that we budget for, beginning with general fund. They'll all have their starting fund balance, similar to the walk forward that Kim just walked you through. It will go through the different revenue categories, give you a total amount on the revenue. Then it will go through those same expenditure classifications, give you a total on the expenditures, and then give you the ending fund balance for that fiscal year. Julian, if I can get you to go to page 6. Actually make it 8. And so at the end of each fiscal year of the 3 that we are presenting in this document, we do have an all funds total that sums up those beginning fund balances, the different revenues, the different expenditures, and then gives you an ending fund balance. Julian, if you'll go one more page over. And then that format is repeated. Blue, again, is the current year amended budget numbers. Okay, and then if you will go 5 more pages so that we are on page 14. And then purple will be representative of the proposed budget for fiscal year 21. Okay, and then if you will flip to page 19, the last 3 pages of this document showcase the last requirements that local government code lays out, which are us presenting our obligations or our debt service. We have 3 pages presented. This first one is the summary of principal and interest for property tax-backed debt issuances. So these are the numbers that Jennifer showcased earlier tonight during our debt service fund discussion. We do have a sentence down at the bottom that talks a little bit about how these particular obligations are funded. Julian, if you'll go to page 20. The next one here are the sales tax backed debt obligations. These are the things that CRDC debt service is paying for. I do call out at the bottom that none of this debt on this page is paid with property taxes. And then Julian, if you'll go to the last page. And then our last summary of debt here is the water sewer backed. And again, at the bottom, I'm calling out the fact that these are paid for with water sewer revenues and not property taxes. So this very, very short 21-page booklet, if you will, meets all 7 of the local government code requirements. By filing it with the city secretary tomorrow and then publishing it online, we will meet our legal obligations so that we can proceed with next steps in our budget process, including adoption on the August 11th meeting. Obviously, it's not as pretty as we like it to be. It is much shorter. Again, I cannot stress enough for anyone listening at home, these are not the final proposed numbers. These are numbers as of today that are representative of the information we have, knowing that we will get better information, specifically from the appraisal district, and that this will be revised, and then our regular long format will be published and made available by August 5th. So what questions can I answer about our initial proposed budget for you?
Casey, can you go back to page 2?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that when you're looking at these budgetary highlights at the bottom, I love the way that we've got the figures, but then the percentage increase for each item, because I think that's really what the public is looking for, not the dollars, because then it's too difficult to go find what last year's numbers are. So if we could just kind of continue that, anytime we're putting something out like that, that's just a huge help, I think.
Mayor and Council, we will have y'all a copy of this document tomorrow. So.
We appreciate the condensed time frame, and this, to me, kind of feels, it makes us feel more institutional, more governmental, because we're talking about an initial proposed adjustment or budget that we know will be adjusted at least 2 more times before it's final. And I don't know. I guess what we're doing is we're inviting everyone to see the way things happen in the budget meetings. It's just like condensed. So we thank you all very, very much for all of the work that you put in on this. And it's, I know that it hasn't been easy to make these cuts and to make those decisions. And honestly, you've made our job pretty easy. I mean, I know we've had lots of conversations about what's important and what's not important, but you guys had to put the pencil to the paper to make it work, and it is highly appreciated. Highly appreciated. Any other questions or comments? I know we all can't wait to read the document we're going to get tomorrow. Mike, looks like Mike spent a long time on those first couple pages.
Casey did spend a long time on those first couple of pages.
Well, you had to approve it. You had to sign it, so
Yes, I did. That was my job to sign it.
Okay. Any other general discussion about the budget? Jennifer, Casey, Kimberly, is there anything that you didn't get to say that you wanted to say? If you didn't, it's all your own fault, because you had the floor. Okay. So, there being no other business before us, the time is 7:49, and we are adjourned. Thank you all again very much. I really appreciate it. Though I
Thank
do
you, Mayor and
miss the
Council.
banana pudding.
Hey, can we get a home delivery?
Yeah, it's called email.
I did give her one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.